Is it going to save the recording?
Hopefully,
Good.
we'll see.
What up, guys? Welcome back to the Hyped Mind. This is for the parents out there. If you're a parent or you want to be a parent, right? Props to you. Go be a parent. I think
Future
that's a great
parent,
idea.
maybe grandparent
But there's
or
a
godparent.
insidious message that is being fed culturally, societally to us all, especially to women, especially to single parents. I think they're a lot more susceptible to it. But yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. So, welcome back to the Hype Mind. I'm your host here with your other host, Daniel. I'm Bear, and we're talking about this insidious message society is giving to parents or wannabe parents, and that message is putting your children first. I think that is one of the most toxic things parents can align themselves to. It's one of the things I've seen in the dating world where a lot of single mothers will be like, my child comes before anything else. My child comes before anything else. Um, there's nothing you can do to separate me from my child. All these things, and I think it's promoted and encouraged, and it's actually something society wants to happen because it tears apart relationships, right? It's you putting your offspring before your relationship with that which raises your offspring, right? Because a good relationship, everybody, most people won't argue the fact that a child does best in, best case scenarios for a child to be in a home with two parents. One is a male, one is a female, right? The statistics are out there. Go look it up. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean children can't do better in other scenarios. They do good, right? But some of them. But that's the always has been statistically proven the
Well,
best
yeah, you make a great point
situation.
here. Like, you make a great point here. I mean, anyways, if you're putting your children first and you really want them to do well, it's like you're going to want to think of this. You're going to want to think of how your relationship to your children and yourself and their environment is going to support them.
Right. Well, and the message isn't neglect your children. The message isn't put your children to the bottom. If anything, it's second your children to a great relationship that will benefit them, right? That doesn't mean, in not putting your children first, you should go look for lousy relationships, right? But it means you need to prioritize being in a healthy relationship with a wonderful partner. I think personally, someone of the opposite sex, um, for yourself and your children, right? Not out of a selfish place of I want a relationship so that I can have needs met. Not that relationships don't meet needs, of course they do, but out of a place of understanding that you as a human being are meant to share life. You're meant to share life with someone who has a common goal with you of, doing something great together, whatever it is. Maybe it's having a great family or whatever. Um, and the byproduct of that is you do get needs met as well, but you also create the best environment for your children to grow up.
Hmm.
But I think it is a very deliberate message, um, especially an attack on single mothers, that society is out here telling you to prioritize your children first, because that tells you to second relationships. And what your child really needs is you as a mother or a father to be in a good relationship. Not that they can't do well, with a single parent household, but they will do better, right? And I think it's an attack on the nuclear family and on the belief that men and women being together in a relationship are going to raise children better than a parent on their own. We know it's a tough struggle. You don't even have to argue that. It's like if you're a single mom or a single dad, you're having a hard time raising a child or multiple children. Obviously, you'd want help, and I think it's a cultural attack on preventing that, and it's insidious. It's something you don't know is happening.
Dude, I think there's something so vital about like showing your children what a relationship should look like what loving each other should look like. And that's what
Outside of
parents
your
are
relationship
for.
with your
Yeah.
children.
Exactly. That's it too. And I've heard this so many times, and I mean I just think it's so I love every time I hear it because you know, it just reminds me to my own childhood and just seeing like even other people's parents where it the children just seem so awkward around their parents together because they don't care, like they don't really care for each other. And how let's talk about what I was hearing was that, you know, people they say and focus on loving your wife or focus on loving your husband, right? That's going to be a great way to raise your children, is to have a
Right.
household, right? A relationship in the household that actually just demonstrates true care for each other and
Right.
and how that's super impactful.
Well, and that's why relationships are so important, is because while you need to be able to come from a place of loving yourself, you also need to be able to exist in a place of being able to take your love and share it with others. And you need to be, you know, everybody is in a different situation, so the message to the narcissist would be give yourself to other people. The message to the person who's a nice guy or who gives themselves too much to others would, might be love yourself a little more. But relationships teach you to do that. They kind of help you realize where you stand in relation to others. Are you overgiving yourself? Are you undergiving yourself? Are you a selfish person? Are you someone who is too much of a doormat? Um, you know, and it allows you to kind of realize where you stand in relationship to your beliefs around love and other people, and to properly orient that. But that call to be in a relationship and to serve other people, and to serve yourself in growth by serving other people. That's that's there's a reason that the best place to raise children is in, a family dynamic that's together like that. And that's because you're doing exactly that. You're serving someone, you're teaching your children to serve someone, you're serving yourself in growth. You're working to, I don't remember what word you used, but you're learning to love someone more and more
Care,
every day. Huh?
care. I might have said care.
Care. Yes. Yeah. You're learning to just demonstrate prioritizing something outside of yourself, cooperating with something outside of yourself while still managing yourself and having boundaries and all these other things. But
Yeah.
but yeah, you need to understand that putting your children first, it's not good in a lot of different ways. And one is it's not actually getting you the results you want. You think it's going to mean that you're going to prioritize your children, but really it results in um, a lot of different harmful things. And one of them is you end up, from what I've seen, in relationships that are actually incredibly toxic with your children, right? I've seen countless people where they're like best friends with their kids, and their kids walk all over them because they spend all this time putting their kids first instead of their relationship with their partner first. And now their kids walk all over them years later, and they're like, no, my kids don't. And I'm like, yes, they do. Every time your kid mouths off at you, and you back off and say, oh, you're right, honey, like they're walking all over. It's like it promotes toxic relationships with children. It devalues yourself as a human. It devalues the importance of a relationship with a partner for the sake of children. This whole idea of prioritizing your children as the number one thing in your life is
Hmm.
it's horrible. It's really, it's kind of perverse, to be
Uh,
honest.
you bring up
It's
some good points.
disguised as beautiful, but I do think it is perverse.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points. I can definitely see that too, where, you know, letting your children walk all over you. And like it's just you upholding the fort, or not the right way to say it, but you know, it's like you need also an advocate there as well to like help your children grow. Like that's also a good thing. Uh,
Yes. Well, and that goes into respect, right? One of the things I read about, I hear about, I've witnessed some situations in person where people are like, oh, my child comes first, and then they'll be in a relationship. Well, what happens when the child disrespects the partner that's not their biological parent, right? A lot of times that partner ends up getting disrespected, which creates a lot of turmoil in the relationship. That's that's rubbish. Especially in a single mother situation where she's dating. If you don't prioritize your relationship over the children, then you won't prioritize your child respecting your partner. And well, one, you probably won't have as good a relationship with your partner. And two, that's no way to raise your children. And people will argue, well, no, they do respect it. But what you do is you disrupt the hierarchy of parenthood, because ultimately any person stepping into a partnership with someone who has a child, whether they share that child or that's a single parent that they're stepping into, there still has to be a hierarchy of respect where that person is stepping into the role of parent, even if that child is beyond parenting age. You know, a child is never beyond parenting age, to be honest, right? Like even as a 26-year-old, my parents still offer me advice, offer me wisdom, you know. So I think a lot of the disrespect you see within families is the fact that children haven't been encouraged by their biological parents to respect their new non-biological parents when they absolutely should do that. I mean, that gets into the complications of why it's better to stay together with biological parents. But the message I'm trying to point out is that if you don't prioritize your relationship over your child, then your child will walk all over your relationship and they'll walk all over your partner, and that will ruin your relationship. It will displace the importance of respect for their elders and their authority figures. Not, fine, they're not your parents, but they're still your authority figure, right? They're still joined with your mother or father, who is your parent, in sharing the role of authority. And that kind of stuff where that happens is rubbish. It's such a disgusting thing to witness.
Hmm. Well, I mean, prioritizing your children, someone saying I'm prioritizing my children over a relationship over anything else could could seem virtuous, right? But it could also mean many things. And the instances that you've seen, like all it means is like you're not you, what you're doing is you're letting your children walk over you all over you, and you don't have discipline, and you don't have that relationship to be able to, you know, reinforce that discipline to make their childhood productive and to help them grow. And instead, what it can do is just inhibit their future. And
Well, and that is why dual parenthood of opposite sexes is so important, is because that it's a system of checks and balances, essentially, right? It's the best of both worlds. It's the worst of both worlds too, of course, but it's the best of both worlds, right? You have complete opposites benefit, offering the very best gifts they can give, hopefully, in the best case scenario.
mhm,
And
right.
a lot of people will say, well, my children doesn't walk, child doesn't walk all over me. And some children are great, you've raised them well and they don't. But a lot of children, they're not respectful. And part of that is because you think you have a good relationship with them, but you don't, right? You pretend you have a good relationship with them, but you don't. Or you pretend that what you're doing is the best path without exploring other paths. And then down the line, you find out that you actually messed up and you're not really willing to own that. It's like, it's never too late to go back, and to prioritize the best possible relationship over your child, not pushing your child out of the picture, of course, but understanding that your desire for parenthood is going to be best met in a relationship, be in a relationship with someone of the opposite sex, um, and put that first and foremost to establish the benefit of a relationship for you, the benefit of your relationship with your children, and to allow that proper authority to be shared, because the relationship of parenthood, a relationship in a stage of parenthood is and outside of parenthood too, is a system of checks and balances, right? It's the best, like I said, it's the best of both worlds. And so You need to be able to understand the importance of prioritizing that, right? Because if you're prioritizing your own growth, you're prioritizing your service to others, and you're prioritizing something that's going to benefit your children. And if you put your children first, you're going to be seconding all three of those things, whether you believe it or not, or whether you like it or not.
Right. And you got to understand what prioritizing means or effective prioritizing means. It's like if you really care for children, which I bet you do, it's like you also have to care for the environment they're growing up in, which is you, and how they're being instructed to be good, um, disciplined, members of future society and of your household. And so you're teaching them, and you have to essentially, there needs to be a balance there too. It's like it just reminds me of the thing I hear all the time, right? It's like, the oxygen mask comes down on the airplane. It's like you give yourself oxygen first. And in this case scenario, and like the what you're explaining here is like it just seems like a parent will just completely disregard themselves because they're so focused on their children, but because they disregard themselves and they don't fill their cup, they're not very productive parents in raising their children.
Well, and I think thank you to a couple of things you said, because I think people don't feel like they're disregarding themselves, right? They just feel like they have to take care of their children first and foremost over a relationship. Oh, a relationship is time consuming, it might be selfish, etc. I've heard a number of excuses, but you have to realize that you know you you hurt yourself and your child by not prioritizing a relationship. That your life would be better with a relationship. You probably want a relationship, and and especially the part where you mentioned environments, that's so critical because your ability to choose a relationship and to have a good relationship automatically places your child in an environment where they see other human beings firsthand growing together in a relationship with another person and still able to have boundaries and still able to take space to themselves. Because people will argue things like, well, it's important to be able to do things on your own. Well, sure, you do things on your own in a relationship all the time, right? So the whole single life as a parent is just better because it's easier is I think it's rubbish. I mean, I think it's one of those things where people have deluded themselves because your life would be easier with a partner, and your life would be even easier with a partner who you love, and your child will benefit more from seeing you in a relationship with someone you can show love to than they will in seeing you in no relationship at all. Um, so the idea of being real with yourself and looking at the environment you've created for your child is critical, but it's also challenging because it's hard to say, I am teaching my child to do things on their own without the help of other people. I am teaching my child not to prioritize the long term goals over the short term goals, right? Because you're like, first and foremost, my child comes first, not a relationship, because it's hard to find a relationship or whatever excuse you have. Well, that's you submitting a long term goal to a short term goal, long term gratitude to a short term gratification. I have to take care of my child right now and forego a good relationship that my child would grow from better or more so. So, ooh, power flickered. But
Yeah.
yeah, understanding the difference between selfishness and self-concern of like the oxygen mask. It's not selfish to put your oxygen mask on first. It's critical. But there are things that you might prioritize first that are selfish. You have to be careful. You could do something that's selfish. But entering a relationship, a good, loving relationship for your sake and your child's sake, and out of a place of love I don't think that's selfish as long as you're not entering lots of lousy, little shitty relationships.
All right. Wrap up time. So, really, to conclude here, it's like a lot of what you said was very good points. But you want to show your kids a good, you want to give your kids a good upbringing, love your wife, love your husband, and care for them, and prioritize that relationship as well.
Yeah, and just look out for that. I believe it is a very deliberate attack on families. That insidious message of put your children first, especially if you're a woman. I 100% believe that that is a deliberate attack on the family and on women, right? I think it is playing into the I would say the weakness of women because women are very susceptible to nurturing and caring for their child. And so they're playing into that vulnerable area of women where they will put their child first if they're told to, because instinctually that's what they do. So I'm here to encourage, you know, you seeking a healthy relationship for yourself and your children, even if you have children, and to put that over your child. Because if you don't put it over your child, then you won't allow your relationship to healthily evolve into a proper structure of authority and love and respect that it needs to be.
All right,
So
y'all.
on that
Love
note,
you guys for being here and watching.
and love you a little more if you
Done.
subscribe.